All right, welcome to another indie comic creator episode. Today we are finally joined by Steve McArdle. Steve, how are you doing this fine Sunday morning?
I'm doing great, guys. How are you doing?
Awesome,
Pretty
awesome.
good. So where?
Excellent.
What's that?
Great to talk to you.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. I'm a big fan of your work, but I don't have any vendettas, so I'm jealous of Kurt because he's got some vendetta. Um, uh,
Oh, I'll have to. I'll take care of that for you.
where in the world are you, Steve? Where are you coming from?
I'm from Millis, Massachusetts.
Oh, okay. Northeast up there.
Yep.
That's cool. And so to get things started off, we usually ask the same couple of questions, and we want you to go back in time to little Steve when you're about 8, 9, 10 years old, very impressionable. We want you to talk about the first things that opened your eyes to comics and your memories, and just start with that.
Sure. I remember it clear as day too. Second grade, I made friends with a new kid in school. This kid David, and he had a huge comic book collection. And I was aware of comics, but not really into it yet. And he exposed me to all like Spider-Man, the Hulk, Daredevil, Iron Man, all that stuff, the Marvel, DC. And my first comic book was Marvel Team Up 20, Spider-Man and the Black Panther.
20 cents?
I knew 20-cent book. Yep.
Yeah.
Back then, for a quarter, you could buy a comic book and get 5 cents of candy back then.
Yeah, right
So
on.
You
second
know?
grade is a little young. That's like 7, 8 years old for kids to have a
Yeah.
collection, right? That's pretty.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So
And him and his brother both collected, and they had tons of stuff.
right. So if you're adjacent to that, and that you're getting your hands on stuff that I didn't get my hands on for like 5 more years, and those are some long years in between, right?
Oh, he even had like older books. I don't know if he was going to conventions yet, but he had like some of the stuff from the 60s even. And so, you know, we instantly became really good friends. And as soon as I got my allowance from my dad every week, my 25 cents would go into a new comic book every single week.
Right. I got the same exact story, and I remember the 20 cent ones. That's when I first started out. Marvel Team Up, definitely. The Defenders and stuff like that. But I also got caught trying to slip a couple of copies into my parka, and I had to go back and apologize to the man. My brother got away with it, and so my father made him go back and apologize, but I got caught right in the act, and that was like really bad. That was awful. So that's how
Oh,
bad
man.
we wanted these things. It was 20 cent comic I was rolling up and sticking it in my coat. And I look up and the guy's up on the ladder going, no, no, no.
That's so funny. I got caught stealing candy once. It wasn't a comic book, it was candy. And my dad walked me back down to the pharmacy and he goes, "You're going to give him the money you owe him and apologize in person." I was so embarrassed. I never stole anything ever again.
Exactly.
That's how it
Me either.
works.
I know. It was just so humiliating.
Right.
So let's fast forward a little bit. So now talk about school and any art training or lack thereof, because some people have it, some people don't. It doesn't seem like it stops anybody. But what's your story?
Like, I did well in art school. I mean, art
Uh
class
huh.
and like grade school, junior high, high school. They could tell like I was really into it and I had a lot of ideas and things like that. I'm always super into comic books, fantasy art, Frazetta, illustrations and stuff like that. I took a couple of like life drawing classes at one of the local museums, the Cordova Museum.
Right.
And so, you go in and a couple models will come in and you draw them and stuff like that. But I never got any real formal training,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. It looks like your figures are out of imagination and not from observation
hmm
to me.
I mean, I got the anatomy books and stuff like that,
Right.
Bern Hogarth and George Bridgman. And then I remember when was a Christmas, I think. My dad got me the How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way.
Right. For Christmas, right. And we all got that book. That was great. And you learn how to make the heads in proportion, right? I mean, I'm
Oh
I'm a
yeah.
middle school teacher, so I teach that stuff every couple of weeks. Is the legs is half the body, the head is 1/8, and it's really important to know because otherwise, you're just drawing like you're just drawing what comes naturally, which is kind of cool, like a impressionistic style. But if you want to be in comics, and you want to like audition for somebody, they're going to tell you need your anatomy, your drafting styles, you need your perspective and all the basics. So you're going just to regular school like that, and you didn't go to a special art school for high school or anything, right? Just,
No,
but
no.
you had your regular art classes. You learned a little illustration and color theory and all that, right?
Yeah, and the art teachers were pretty cool with me. Like they could tell, like I would really liked what I was doing. For a while, I wanted to draw for Marvel or something like that. I was kind of hoping to go that route. Um, the original, like Vendetta #1, I went to New York, I think '92, to the Javits, the big convention that year,
Right,
to kind of show my samples around and see. And I was like clueless. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't even bring my best pages, and I kind of showed them around to a few people, and didn't really get much response. So I was like, well, I'll come home and I'll publish this, and I'll get better, and then maybe along the way someone will notice it, or I'll get some contacts.
right.
And it turned out I like publishing my own stuff. I used to work at print shops, so I had a lot of knowledge about graphics, printing,
Yeah,
stuff
yeah.
like
Me
that.
too. I worked at a printer and I got thousands of dollars worth of printing for free. And like
Oh,
anytime somebody had a job and they had an extra panel, I was the guy that was laying it all out, so I could just put a business card on there or Kurt knows I used to do these like little giveaway flyer pages and just put something on there. Always have something sitting around, so you just stick it on the job and just and because they're just gonna throw the blank paper out if you don't print something on there.
oh yeah, that's awesome. My first job, I was at Pip Printing. I think they're out of business now. I was doing like paste up art and stuff like that.
Yeah,
And my first paid gig there was a company that did like phone answering service.
yeah,
Wanted a little 4-panel strip to show what their company did and what the service was. So I drew a little 4-panel comic strip, and it was like my first actual professional, getting paid to draw.
right.
Nice.
Right. Well, those opportunities are definitely there if you're working in a print shop. People are walking in every day with jobs. I worked at a Kinko's, also, and that all leads to stuff like doing overnights. So take us through your very first publication, whether it was professional or semi-pro. I mean, so what was the first thing that you finished?
Vendetta #1 was the first book I ever did. I was on vacation. I was working on the pages. I was on vacation with my dad, and he had noticed what I was doing, and he's like, "Wow, you're getting really serious about your art. This looks really good."
Right.
And he gave me the money to publish that first issue.
Oh,
So I published Vendetta #1. That did well enough. It gave me money to do #2. I had planned to do a 4-issue series. A lot happened along the way, like #3, I co-published with another guy because he was getting into Diamond, and at the time, Diamond wouldn't take a lot of the small press.
Right.
Turns out he was friends with the Ninja Turtles guys,
Right.
so he was more well connected at the time than I was.
Right.
He was from Maine. I went up to meet him one time, and he was hiring Dick Ayers to do work.
The Dick Ayers.
The Dick Ayers, who inked Jack Kirby on Fantastic Four #1. So I got to go out to dinner with Dick Ayers and his wife. It was cool. It was really cool.
So Vendetta #1 comes out in what year?
1993, I think.
Okay, and
yep.
how many copies did you print?
I printed 500.
Nice. And
Yep, and same with Vendetta 2. They're both just 2-color covers because I couldn't afford full color printing back then. So I did the color separations myself. The two different
Yeah, 2
originals.
plates, right?
Yep.
And let's spend a second at least. Tell us of the story of Vendetta.
He's a scientist, and he works for a huge corporation called Chemicorp.
Okay.
He's a weapons developer and chemicals, and the company is run by a corrupt, trillionaire.
Right.
And so they decided to kill him with his own invention, steal all of his creations. His face gets melted off by Substance X-13, except he doesn't die. He comes back.
And is this set in the future?
I'm not really sure. I didn't really put a timeline on
Right.
it.
Keep it flexible. Good.
Yeah, but I wanted it sort of a post-apocalyptic, sort of like what you guys are doing with Turbo Pit Fighter. It's kind of like that, Escape from New York meets.
Yeah, it's funny because we're more influenced maybe by movies than comics, but there was Deathlock, and there was also like a Kill Raven, I think, right? That was another one.
I love books. That's what.
Yeah.
It's an influence like Ghost Rider, Kill Raven, Deathlock, Son of Satan. I like the supernatural stuff.
Right.
Yep.
It's just good, gritty, And then by the time I got to the 90s, I was already buying stuff like Dead World, Warlock 5,
Right.
The Crow,
Right.
The Turtles.
Yeah, because the indie publishers got a little more into it. Like Marvel and DC seemed like, all right, we're just going to be here in the present, and we're going to have superheroes. But the indies really took off because it was like Star Reach and spaceships, and and like everybody and everything coming out. So Vendetta is your flagship character, right?
Yeah, it's become my most well known. In Vendetta 2, I introduced this guy Artillery.
Mm-hmm.
So once I finished the 4 issues, I go, I should do a one shot, give Artillery his own separate book. And that actually, I printed that at Kinko's I worked the overnight shift,
right? And
so I did 500 copies. Same with like Vendetta Artillery one shot.
Did you do that on the copy, or did you do that on the dye sublimation, or the heavy duty, like the color copiers? Were those just regular Xerox?
It was like color copies. I did color copies for the cover,
right,
and then just black and white of the insides.
Even though it goes through the color machine, right? Because that's more of a printed than a Xerox product.
Yep.
Amazing. So, next question. So take us through your process. Do you start out with pencils and move to inks? What do you use?
Yeah, I do all old school, and to this day I do it the same way too.
You write it as a script first, Steve?
Yeah.
You make a script first? Okay.
I do like a rough outline, and then I break it down to pages.
Right.
And then I do the thumbnails.
Right. Yeah.
It's almost like Marvel method by myself, So like, I leave room to add and change as I go. So I don't have a solid, tight script at the beginning. I have notes. And then as the art comes in, I go, oh, you know what? I should add something here or this there.
Right.
Or,
it's a process that gets you closer and closer to the finished. And are you using a brush for your inks, or are you using a steel pen, or what do you do?
Mostly markers.
Right. And do you want to plug your favorite brands?
Oh boy, I use the Microns.
Right.
And what's the other one? They're from Japan. They do a lot of color markers too.
Right. Yeah, we use those. It's the what do we call the Kuritakis, right, Kurt?
These guys, Tombos, the Tombos, and
the tough thing is that sometimes they're not even written in English at all, right? And I just got a new one, but Kuretake is a really good brand. You can get like 3 for $12, I think. I just got this one, and it didn't have any English writing on the package, but it is made by Pentel, and it's okay. The tip is a little bit a little soft for me. I like a hard tip, even if it's a brush pen. So there's the microns, which are just kind of like that uniform tip, but then there's also all these little brush ink pens that you can get, and you can get more of a variable tip, right? But depending on the pressure.
Pens are great.
Yeah, can't get enough of those. So you definitely got to collect those and see which is the best. So great. And what size are you working at?
1117. So I do standard, 10 by 15 on 1117 paper.
Right.
I do non-repro pencils.
Right. Yep.
That I hand lettered the first few.
Yeah.
And I used a font for a couple of them. And now I've got a font that's actually my hand lettering.
Right.
That somebody made for me.
Great. Yeah, that's a time saver.
Yeah, it saves a lot.
Yeah. And great. So now are you a day job guy that does this on the side, or?
Yeah, I do a bunch of different stuff. I'm a property manager, so I got an old house here.
Mm-hmm.
I rent out a couple of units in the property.
Mm-hmm.
I've been taking on extra side gigs, doing like just some construction demo work in the daytime.
Right.
I got an eBay store, so I sell off old records, old toys, old comics.
Right.
Always busy, just something to try to keep busy, make some money. I wish I could do comics full time. That's my goal. I would love to do that.
Yeah.
But it's hard. It's it takes me so long to make one book.
Yeah.
Well, even with like I'm in a good position now with like Floating World publishing me.
Yeah.
So they put up the money to do the printing and helping get it distributed. But to make a living doing comics is hard.
Well, especially if you're doing everything yourself.
Yeah.
Because if you were just making the pages, that would be one thing. But there's so much more involved, and you got to travel around, and you got to wheel and deal with people, and next thing you know, you're ordering printing from another country and all this stuff.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Oh, you mentioned that you sell vinyl. Do you have a personal vinyl collection?
Oh yeah. I'm a big music fan. I played in bands for a lot of years.
Right on.
There was a record chain in New England called Strawberries.
Uh-huh.
I did Strawberries for 5 years.
They were here too, yeah.
So I got thousands of records, tapes, bootlegs, videos. I've toured a little bit with my bands. We played, across the country a bit, did some festivals, went up to Canada a few times.
That's cool. Why don't you plug the name of your band?
Yeah, I was in a band in the 80s called Lethal Fury.
Okay.
There's an ad for it in one of the old Vendetta issues.
Right.
And then my last band was called Skullhammer. You can see we got videos up on YouTube.
Sounds like a hardcore?
Thrash metal, speed metal.
Right. And what do you play?
I sing and play guitar.
Nice.
And so, I drew the logo. I write, 95% of the songs.
Right. Great. Sounds amazing. Yeah, I have lots of friends that are in that. My band is garage punk, but we my old guitar player is he joined Whiplash for a long time, and they were doing the thrash circuit for like headlining and stuff.
Wow, he was in Whiplash from New York.
Yeah. Well, Jersey, yeah, but the New York area.
Power and Pain.
Right. Yeah. They had some great stuff, and he's been in a bunch of different bands like that. But my band's the Von Ghouls, and I find like more a home in punk rock because you don't have to be such a great musician, and I've always been kind of like a hacker on rhythm guitar. So anyway,
So Jake.
Yeah.
All right. One thing I want to bring up is that we met Steve for the first time at IC3, and I would love to get his, just take an experience on what he had going on with IC3, and a shout out to Matt King because he was the one that introduced you when I walk in there. So, and Matt has been on my back for about a year and a half to get you on that.
Yeah, that's a great dude. He's a great guy.
Love Matt. Thank you. But tell us how IC3's been treating you, because that was your second year, right? You and Matt were there the first year. So
yeah.
Give us a lowdown.
Yeah, Matt and I, we drove down together. We split the room. It was great, man. It was such a good time.
Yeah, it was good. Um,
It was.
you were at the drink and draw, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and were you in the big room when it came to the table?
Excuse me, getting over a cold.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, we were in the big room. It was great, man. The place was packed. I sold a bunch of stuff. One guy came in with a Vendetta #1
Oh, sweet.
mint that he had bought somewhere. Had me sign and do a sketch on it.
Wow,
It was
Nice.
great. It was great.
that's cool. So and that came out in '92. You said '93.
Yeah, I think '93.
Yeah, wow. So that's good. And then you put what was the last thing that you put out?
Last thing I just did was Vendetta #5. First new issue in 30 years. I picked up where it left off. Vendetta
Yeah.
#6 comes out next month.
Right.
Which,
And we want to make sure that we link to where people can grab that. And you said you're working with Floating World. Is that what you're working with them on?
yep, this will be coming out through Floating World next month.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Kurt,
And I'm working on #7 now.
Kurt will definitely link to that so people can know where they can get that. Are you seeing that Vendetta #1s are becoming collectible out there?
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. There's a copy. I don't know if it's still up on eBay. It was up for almost $2,000.
What?
Nice.
How many?
1990.
Nice.
How many you have
Yeah,
left?
I mean, he's asking, trying to that or best offer.
Yeah.
I mean, uh, yeah, they've definitely gone up in value.
You could put it up there for 2,000, but
All right, no, I don't
when
think
it sells for 2,000, that's what I always love. But it's a really interesting strategy to have in putting everything up. But Power Comics is kind of responsible for the resurgence in the genre and the style of
yeah,
comics. Do you want to share a little bit of how Ethan maybe had reached out to you, and I know you guys did an interview, and then Floating World got involved because I'm a huge fan of Power Comics, and I remember when you had come on and everything, and them finding your stuff.
yeah, that's the missing piece to the puzzle. Because
Right.
my band had broken up a few years ago, and I was ready to come back to comics again. But I wasn't sure where I was going to start or what to do, And then they had reached out to me and said, "Hey, we discovered your books. We got a YouTube channel. Would you come on and do an interview, talk about your stuff?" And I went on a few times.
Yeah.
We read through Vendetta 1. We read through #2. And one of the episodes, Evan said, "Hey, stick around after the show. We want to talk to you. We got a project we're doing to see if you're interested." And we're working with Floating World. We want to republish some of these old books.
Yeah.
Would you be interested in doing like a Vendetta trade paperback? And I was like, "That's perfect. Yes, of course I would."
That's awesome.
And so I kept all my original art. I had everything sitting in the closet, and I pulled everything out, organized it, so the trade paperbacks got all 4 issues of Vendetta, plus the artillery book. I had been commissioning some artists. I was going to do like a cover by George Tuska or Gene Colan. So I had 4 pieces of art by Tuska, 1 by Colan. So I had 5 pieces of great art of my characters I never inked or got to finish. So I finished those, inked them, included those in the book, plus interviews, plus letters pages, ads, reviews. Right, so yeah, there it is there. So you can see all the extra stuff.
Right.
Yeah, there's the Gene Colan.
Gene Colton, yeah.
Yep.
That was pencils and then inked by you, right?
He penciled it. He's a hard guy
Yeah.
to ink. The original is on my wall in a frame right back there.
Yeah.
And it's huge.
Oh, wow.
It's awesome.
Oh, wow.
And then a little while after that, I contacted Tuska, and he was very reasonable for his commission. So first I had him do an Iron Man, because that's kind of what I remembered him for. There we go. And then I had him do, Vendetta, Artillery, Leviathan, and Bludgeon.
Right. And what? And so, when did the trade paperback come out?
It was like 3 years ago now.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I think it's 22.
and
I
that
think so.
Yep, 22.
Yeah.
22. Yeah, I got mine right when it came out. And I also have to, like, once again, applaud Ethan and the Power Comics for being so authentic in like reaching out to you, but also shining a spotlight on you as an individual whose passion, is comics, and it's the core of who you are. And the fact that you kept your originals even through all of the time where we all go into those spaces of doubt. Like, oh, it's not going to go. So, like that. Oh, not going to move places. So why keep carrying these boxes with us and with me, like that? But you kept it, and it's amazing.
Right.
It's amazing. So
I put so much work into those pages, like
oh yeah,
a long time. You guys. That's what I love about your work too. Is you can see the rigor on the pages. You can see like all the work. You guys, a lot of stuff has a lot of empty space in it or whatever.
Yep.
You guys fill up every inch. I try to do the same thing too. So a couple people offered to buy some of my best pages, and I was like, I don't know, $50, $100, and I was like, I'm not going to sell those for that.
No way.
You know what I mean? Like, I know I'm not a well-known artist or whatever, but I'm like,
not yet.
Me.
Not yet.
So yeah,
You're
I mean, the
way.
way I feel about it is, if you have high-res scans of it and that are print quality, you could do stuff in the future and keep putting it out, sell the original art. But you got to get a decent price for it. Like, a 50 to 100 is like, what they pay. Yeah, it's giving it away, and you could do a lot better, especially if, once something's published.
Well, the other thing too is like you, Jake, and I back in the '90s, through all the frustration of trying to put comic books together, trying to get them sold, all that kind of stuff. Never thought the internet was going to come along with a channel called YouTube. No. And, Ethan and the guys for Power Comics came from Tumblr. They were running a Tumblr doing all the Power Comic collecting. Then they throw it onto the YouTube channel. Then they reached out to the creators. And the last few videos, Ethan's been CGing the books. So... Yeah. And like that's a magical thing that none of us could have predicted. Yet at this time, right where we're at, we're all late 50s-ish kind of thing. We still have a lot of other things that are coming along that, the worlds have been created, the energy has been dynamically generated on the pages, and there's no stopping us. I want to do something to the best of my ability, and you guys, need to just sort of like work this out for me, because I started reading Crowbar a couple of nights ago, and it is very dense. But I think the second or third night, Steve, I kind of had to shake my head and be like, oh, you know what? Jake needs to have a conversation with Steve about how to take what the idea is in one's head and put it down, because you guys are both working from a similar strategy. And I know, and this might be the best way to lead the question, is you stated from the beginning you were buying the 20-cent books, just like Jake was. Now, Jake did a class with Denny O'Neil, which I think just tightened the sense. But I want you to start, Steve, and Jake, I really want you to bounce off of what Steve says. But what is it that you ultimately remember about every one of those 20-cent comics that you feel you have to pour into your pages and your story?
Boy, it's good. But it's hard to put into words because I was so young.
Yeah, that's why you make comics now.
Yeah, it's good though, because man, I love comics so much, and like I drank in everything that I could, like the characters, the origins. I love what are his superpowers, what are her superpowers, and the artists, like learning. Oh, that's Jack Kirby, that's John Romita. So I try to put in like the dynamics of Kirby, the
It's amazing.
illustration or anatomy of like a John Buscema, John Romita, Jim Starlin,
Yeah,
um,
the better ones.
and also like a storytelling that's complex but not too hard to follow. Like a good middle ground of everything.
Yeah. So for me, like what got me, because you hit the nail on the head. It's because you're so young, right? I
Yeah,
mean, this, the comics today are probably hitting some kid the same way, except now they have to split their time between video games and internet and whatever else. But it was magical because when you're a bored kid and you're playing with your toys at home and your brother's beating you up and everything, you go down
yeah.
to the store and you know what it is? It's the primary colors that really sinks in with me. Like it was like Nighthawk and the
Right.
red and the banners and it was like all the you would see like a Starlin cover of Hulk with Spider-Man, and then there would be like this big yellow background, and this big red and blue, colors, um,
Totally.
and comics were still very corny back then. But then, a couple years, it was only like maybe 2 or 3 years later when you get into, Steve Gerber and Howard the Duck and all this kind of conceptual stuff, and you're just growing along with the genre, you're growing along with the medium, I should say. And then it just branches out because by the time we get our hands on, by the time we start making stuff ourselves, it's a whole open world of indie creators going in a million different directions, and everyone's trying to you know sell some books or get noticed or get hired, and then some of us are getting into our 20s and just still going. That's the crazy thing, is like, is that you're still this kid somewhere, and when you're able to create content, it's like a privilege because you can, instead of having a job where you're driving a truck or you're some corporate desk, you're making all these worlds of like power and electricity and lightning and the power, all this stuff, the bad guys, the good guys, the hot chicks and the situations, and um it's always about, every comic, you start flipping through pages and you see what's in there, that I can use, what's in there that I can take from, get inspired by, and it just makes me want to, like, put down the comic and pick up a pencil.
Totally. That's a really good point. Like you said too, is creating your own little world. Because that's the way I kind of feel like when I'm working on my comic books, I can kind of like put on some music and I'm walking into Omega City where Vendetta is,
Right.
and I can hear the car crashes and the chains clashing and the city sounds, and just immerse myself into it. And what would it look like? What would the graffiti on the walls be? What kind of, it's a post apocalyptic world.
Right.
What's society like?
Yeah, you got, and you're creating the world. So, in a way we're playing God, but on the other hand, we also trying to entertain an audience, right? So, it isn't like, this big head thing where like, oh, I decide what's happening. No, you're trying to make something that people, will appreciate, and they'll get interested in, and they'll buy it and buy more and be fans. What I love, you mentioned about your page is like, that you try to pack in detail, right? And you really put some value on the page. To me, that's great. And as soon as I flip through a comic, I can tell if they have just like wasted space and it's just sparse, that I'm just like, oh, okay. But here you have that going on, and it really just adds so much value there because it makes you, even if there's like here you have a lot of clouds, right? It's not like you're drawing like an entire cityscape in perspective, but folks should just know, like, fill up your pages, like do stuff, put stuff on the page, don't leave blank empty space, for God's sakes. It doesn't have to be a lot, it can just be indications,
Yep.
and then you do your close-ups, you do your zoom ins, you do your you're changing your angles.
That's it too. Is like you mentioned movies. I always think of. I'm a big movie fan too. So you think of like the camera angles, close ups far away, all the different dramatics.
Yeah, you got to vary the scene. I mean, there are people that do it on purpose, like Dave Sims of Aardvark, of Cerebrus the Aardvark.
Cerebus.
Right, so he'll have like a page, and every panel will be the same exact shot of the same exact character in the same exact pose, and then they're just changing the word balloons. And there's something to be said for that, because it has like a timing and a pacing, and it reminds you of comic strips and stuff. But but in a comic book, to me, is a movie, and you're bringing somebody on an adventure, and so you should be varying angles and coming in, coming out, and establishing things. Everything's for effect. So you want to heighten the drama, the intensity. Something's all dark and moody, right? You're changing, you're controlling all that kind of stuff,
Yep.
and the movement on the page. So you do a great job on this. And for folks out there, anything Steve McArdle has, you should pick up and support this art. This is one of the good guys here in the biz that you're gonna.
Well, there's a couple things. Like, the thing that both of you have by design is that there isn't anything lacking in your books and your stories. Like, both of you have this intensity and it's not so much just filling up the page with quote unquote nonsense. It's all that stuff to keep you focused in on the story. But also, I have to go back to this morning. I finished reading, and then I just went back and I was like, well, and when I hit this, I was like, oh, Jake just did the same thing with the end of the world
Timeline.
The timeline, but the index of characters.
Yeah.
And this you would always. I always love that, like the Marvel Universe comics, where they just had like the D&D. It was always so. I never even got really like the backstories. Obviously, they were trying to sell you to go buy the backstories and everything, but the character design and the powers and the placement and the context of where they were with all these stories, like, you're constantly referring back to these characters in a very simplistic way. There's not an over complexity to them, which is just good B movie, straight to VHS fun. And it's just, Jake and I, are the same way. I'd like to actually take this moment to move us into hearing what you have to say about our Turbo teaser, which I was able to get a copy in your hands, which, I'd even like to hear more questions from you, Steve, about what we're doing. Just because there's such a similarity in helping us both tighten up our games and getting our books in front of people, and gaining more fans.
There is, dude. I love what you guys are doing. Like, I really enjoyed this book a lot. Again, it's like, it's dense, like you said. And I can tell there's a passion. You can see the passion on the page. You look at this stuff and you can tell these guys love what they're doing, and I think it translates. There's some stuff where, same with music, like some bands, their first album or two was killer. Yeah. By the 10th album, they're kind of mailing it in a little bit. This is like 100%. You can tell. And you guys are really taking your time and really, really making something like really solid that'll stand the test of time.
Yeah, well, it's taken a lot of time to do it, but it's a good point. And one thing that we have in common is that we also kind of Rip Van Winkled our careers for a long time, right? And then you come back, because Kurt and I sat down to do Turbo Pit Fighter #1 in, like, what was it, Kurt? Like 99 or something, or 97?
we started. It was always you and I. Don't want to make it about us, but we would always have ideas that would get started. But Turbo was one you would always like. Oh, I was thinking about Turbo because I would drive up from Wilmington to spend the weekend with Jake, but we were doing like Jacob Javits and the comic book shows and the such, where I was getting most of my work from like horror comic buzz. You remember Dark Fantasies, the anthology?
Oh, I don't know if I know that
Steve?
one.
I gotta grab my copy. I was in a couple copies of that. But anyhow, the thing is that Jake actually got to a point where he finished the pages and then the pencils. Excuse me, finished the pencils, and then I think it was like 6 months later or something. He said, "Oh, I repenciled the pencils to make them tighter, and I want you to ink them now." And so then, life goes on, and we're separated for a while, just based on that kind of stuff. But Jake is right about it. It's the Rip Van Winkle effect.
Well, that's why your stuff looks so good. As you can tell, you guys are like, I do the same thing too. That CROWBAR9 80-page giant.
Yeah.
There are some panels that are different from the original publication. I published Crowbar 1 and 2, and I never published the third issue.
What time? What year did it first come out?
It was 98.
Okay.
It was late 90s by that point. I wasn't getting any distribution. I did the first two. I had started number 3, but never finished it. So when I went to Floating World to do the 80-page giant, I went back, I rewrote and relettered that whole book.
Wow.
And I even redid some of the panels. So it's a whole new experience from like the first books that I published.
And
I can send you guys copies. I can send you some stuff.
Right, the before and after.
It's a huge difference.
And do you walk through this on the Power Comics episodes with those guys?
I don't know if we got into the CROWBAR9 stuff. He hasn't been doing as many episodes lately.
Okay.
He's been doing more Golden Age and stuff like that.
So, because like for me the best part is like I just get the warm fuzzies when we just dive into the content. And Kurt, like, he's gonna ask you about the business of comics and all that, but I just gotta ask you, like, what are the names? Like, this is a wraparound cover. It looks hand colored, right?
Yep.
What are the names of these characters?
Oh, you got G-Force, the guy flying.
Right.
Is Moses Malloy. He's sort of like the team leader. You have the beard.
Okay.
Yep. Blur is the guy running.
Right.
Fast. He's like my speedy character.
Right.
The blue girl is Cyclone. So she was a girl that had psychic powers but was terminally ill. So they cloned her.
Okay.
So she's a clone of the original
Cyclone.
girl.
Get it? She's psychic and clone. Yep. Okay.
Yep.
It's hot. Yep. That's hot.
It's good stuff.
Yep. The big gray guy was Slate. He was a construction worker who fell into a vat of cement, and now he's like a man of living cement.
He took on the properties.
Yep. Black dude with the chains, his chain gang with the big spiked shoulder pad.
Right.
Photon is the blonde with the red suit on. Yep. Demolition is the redhead with the like bikini and like denim jacket vest.
Wow.
And was it Gravity is the young sort of punky kid with uses an 8-ball.
Right. Yeah.
To focus his powers.
Gotcha.
Nice. So awesome.
CROWBAR9, and there's.
I put a lot of time into like developing the characters. I put a lot of like thought in before I start drawing. I want to have everything really like in my mind solid, so I know what I'm doing.
And I see a lot of so the influences here. I mean, I see, to me this kind of reminds you of Lady Death, the way her hair is, and you have a lot of maybe like a lot of Image influence too, right?
Yeah, I was into the '90s Image stuff too, like everybody was back then,
But you don't do that like glitzy coloring. You're doing the hand coloring and then black and white internals, right?
Yeah, I do. colored markers.
Right.
I actually, the first couple of Vendetta books that were full color, I think I was still using the Dr. Martin
Yeah,
watercolors.
pigments. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I can't get my hands on those anymore. But
you can't find them. No, you can't find them.
right, I look for colored inks, but you want those translucent inks, right? That just go right.
Yes, I
Yeah,
can't find them either. I'm
yeah,
dying. I'm dying for a set of those.
I found this. I found these liquid watercolors. I get them from school, but you gotta really water them down, and then that makes the page kind of wrinkly, which sucks. So, um,
yeah, because it's super intense. The color in those are super, super intense.
right,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
you definitely got to keep it.
But when you've already inked the page and you've like erased all your penciling and stuff, when you put those colors down, they would seep below the black, so you wouldn't get that film over the top of your black. You would just get that color in there, and that's the thing I'm looking for in coloring, because obviously somebody is going to say, "Oh, well, keep the black plate and then just print out another plate and then put the color and put the plates on top of it." Yes, I'm good with that, but I still have times where I would love to be able to just have, that concentrated dye, those colors, and then just take a little drop of each, and then you make a new color and just kind of create it as a gray, if you will,
Yep,
watery, but it doesn't sit on top of the black ink you've already laid down. So
yep.
if
I
anybody
always,
has a suggestion, just please put it in the comment.
Right. This is great stuff, man. This is great stuff. So, what are you working on right now?
I'm working on Vendetta number 7.
Right, and
Yep,
Man.
that's going to come out as a floppy with Floating World.
yep, yep. Number 6 comes out next month. I don't know when I'm going to have number 7 done. I'm kind of behind schedule a little bit. I've been just so busy with work and
Yeah,
different
Yeah,
stuff, things like that.
yeah.
But
life
Life.
is happening out there. All right. Well,
I work every day at it.
oh yeah, that's great. Yeah,
It
I
shows.
love. Yeah, I know. I love when you can just sit down and just do something creative instead of all this negativity that we're having in the world.
It's the best part of my whole day. I try to, you get your work done, pay your bills, whatever, business phone calls, and I love to just be able to like put on some music or whatever and get to the drawing table.
Right. Right.
Actually, I if you can see it, but I got a pinball machine back here. I use as a drawing table
Really? Do you have to have like a high chair for that?
because I don't like to spend too much time sitting.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah, that's
Oh, you
great.
stand. Oh, I
That is
get it.
great.
So
Yeah, he stands.
yeah.
Yeah, I stand. I'm at a drawing stand right now. But to have the length of the pinball machine to put stuff up here,
Yeah,
like, and then
exactly. It's like
so it's so awesome. Now I just got to convince my wife to let me have one. So get it upstairs. But oh man, this is great. Yeah, we're over the 45-minute mark. We try to keep these bite sized. We also tell our guests that Jake and I are not a one and done. We don't have a list of creators. We don't check them off and then forget about them. We're always looking to have them come back. So I want to already put it out there. When you have 7 complete, then we'll get in touch and we'll just help you do some promo. Just do some promo and a video where we can kind of take a look at everything that's going from there and a catch up with you. But other than that, Steve, can't thank you enough
Yeah.
for taking the time.
thank you guys. It's been a blast. Like, this went by like 5 minutes.
I know.
And well, we should just keep going and going, but we all have things to do and places to go. But let people know where they can get a hold of Crowbar, Vendetta, and you online.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I've got an eBay store, so I got all my stuff up there. I've actually got. I've been working with Victory Toys, so there's Vendetta action figures now.
I saw the influence when you came to this page right here of Chance and his crazy world, right? I saw that influence because he put out these amazing comics, and this was exactly what was in my mind.
Chance is great.
Yeah,
He's great.
and
He's great.
so show the figure again.
Yeah, there's I've got a few different ones now. There's There's these ones which are articulated.
Right.
He just got an unmasked version of Vendetta Monster Face.
Right.
The dark versions of these. And then he's got a one piece called a fetish figure, just a more simple,
Right.
just like a child's toy.
Right.
So different versions. They're on eBay. They're on Etsy. You can get the books at Floating World. The trade paperback is up on Amazon, stuff like that. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook.
Right.
And it's all Steve. It's all
good opportunity.
Are your handles online? Are they predominantly Steve McArdle, or you want to give? Okay, so your eBay, your Etsy, your Instagram, it's all Steve McArdle.
eBay is Stevel Knievel.
That's awesome.
Facebook is Steve Ace McArdle. Okay. My parents never gave me a middle name, and somebody as a joke, like, "What would your middle name be?" I said, Ace.
Of course.
That's awesome.
It kind of became my nickname, and I kind of just incorporated it.
The Space Ace.
But yeah, and I was a little kid. You know, I like music and rock and roll, and metal, and all that stuff.
So speaking of music, yeah, Kurt, we have to also put Steve on the list. One day, Kurt and I we're gonna do a list of comic guys that are also music guys, and we're gonna put out like a maybe like a
playlist.
CD, like a playlist or a CD or a YouTube playlist would probably be the most sense. But if CDs still exist, whatever it's going to be a chip or something in the future. But there's so many guys that we that we interview that end up being music guys too, and it just goes hand in hand.
I'm gonna get a mailing address for you guys. I'll send you a care package. So I'll send you some extra Vendetta stuff, and I've got vinyl records of my the band.
Oh, I'll definitely trade you. I have 2 7-inches from my band over the years, but
oh, dude, awesome! That'd be
definitely
cool.
like to trade. Yeah,
that would be great. Yeah, I'll send you a whole bunch of stuff.
Cool.
Thank you. All right. Jake, you want to take us out?
Yeah, so folks, you should check out our flagship series. It's Making Turbo Pit Fighter. It's our main YouTube podcast. And then we have, you just watched another episode of Indie Creator Exchange. Our third channel is the Comics That Influence, where we do flip-throughs of the best comics we can get our hands on. And that's it. We will see everybody next Sunday around 10 a.m. live on Instagram and YouTube. And until then, have fun and be well.
Now I'll see you next Sunday, Jake.
All right, guys.
And hold tight, Steve. Hold tight.